Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Welcome back after our week off. So hopefully you guys didn't miss us too much. I mean, I'm sure we're just a part of your everyday routine. So hopefully we didn't throw you off too much. Maybe some of you joined Patreon to get some of those extra bonus episodes. So that would be super fun.
And if you did, you won't get a shout out until not next episode, but the episode after that, because we're still recording ahead to give us a little cushion room so that I'm not having to fly back and be jet lagged and try and record a podcast, because it will not go well. It won't go well.
Doesn't sound like a good time. This is gonna be the last time we record for like 3 weeks, so this is gonna be crazy, but
It is so crazy, like, especially like because we've recorded ahead, and like I'll look at all our scheduled like episodes we've already done, and I'm just like, I don't remember half of the stuff we talked about. Like,
nope. Yeah, my dad was texting me about something after listening to what came out last week, that episode, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, we recorded that so long ago, I don't even know what we said.
yeah, and every time we do this, I'm always like, I'm gonna take like highlight notes so that like this is what we kind of discussed, and then like here's our perks so that we can kind of like reference it. And I never do, and it's never gonna happen, and I need to just stop that pipe dream here.
Yeah, we figure it out eventually. You know, when you send us your whatever we say to send us at the end, and you send us that information, and then it triggers that. Oh yeah, that's what we talked about. So you know, we figure it out. It's fine. It's all good.
Yeah, and like sometimes I'm just like thinking also, I'm like, well, this episode already came out, and I'm like, no, it didn't. Like in my mind, sometimes like when we
Yeah.
record and like upload it and then like approve it, I'm like, okay, it's out, and I'm like, oh no, it's not.
Or like last week when I saw the title of the episode to do our Instagram post and everything, and I literally had to sit there for a minute and be like, what is this about? I don't remember. And then I was like, oh yes, I remember, because I was just like, they're all blurring together. There's too many. I don't know what I'm doing.
It's like, which one? So after this week and next week, we're going to be a little bit closer to recordings. So maybe
Yes.
then we won't be as, or what? Or it's a season of life, and you know what? We're still getting through it, and we're going to still get episodes for you. Just not last week. Too bad.
Yes, one week off. I think we'll all be okay.
Karen and Georgia can take like every summer off. We can too.
Exactly.
But yeah, and we do kind of have a follow-up on the update we gave last week. I'm pretty sure his name is actually Jesse Smollett. And I think I said Juicy last week. Because I was listening to it, the edited version, and I was like, I don't think that's right. So I'm sorry, guys. If it was wrong last week, you've probably emailed us about it. And you know what? For what he did, I don't really think it matters. But he is appealing his conviction, and he's on bond, so he's out anyway. So,
Of course. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know who this person was before all of this came to be, so I don't know how to pronounce his name.
yeah. Because it's spelled like juicy, and I think I just said it. And then I was like listening, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. I think it's Jesse, but you know what? He's not going to listen to this, so I don't really care. But he is appealing his conviction, even though in my opinion, he got a pretty light sentence.
Yeah.
But he is out on bond after filing that appeal, so guess we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, and just yesterday at the time that we are recording this, so like a month ago, by the time you guys are hearing this, one person was killed and 20 were injured, including children, in a shooting outside of a car show in Dumas, Arkansas. So don't really have a whole lot of information yet on like a motive or, anything, but super tragic. I mean, thankfully, as of right now, most of these people seem like they're going to be okay, but just, wow.
Yeah, because it probably happened within 12 hours of this recording, and so they're probably still trying to piece everything together, but it just kind of brings back gun violence is still a thing in the U.S., and we're still having mass shootings. And honestly, this was like deep down in the trending of Twitter, so it's not even like headline news anymore, or
No.
ever. So
Yeah.
it's just something I think we need to keep talking about. Gun violence is still happening. What is the perfect solution? I don't know, but what we have right now is not working. So,
yeah, clearly something needs to change.
all right, now that you're thoroughly kind of sad, let's go ahead and get into this case. Okay, so for this episode, we used Season 8, Episode 15 of Forensic Files called Sign of the Zodiac. We also used the Mark of a Killer episode, The Other Zodiac. Spoiler alert. We used allthat'sinteresting.com, newyorkmagazine.com, and good old Murderpedia. So, for 6 years in the early 1990s, in New York City, a serial killer threatened to kill a person for each astrological zodiac sign. Did New York City have a copycat Zodiac killer? Let's find out.
I bet Courtney's going to tell us.
I mean, what if we just one time just did an opening sentence that had nothing to do with the episode?
Just wanted to get
Just
your
like-
opinions. Let us know what you guys think.
Yeah.
All right.
All right,
Moving on.
Okay, let's go. Here we go. Different topic. So, New York City in the 1990s was a very different New York City than we know now. A lot of people, if you hear them talk about it, it's like, it's not the tourist attraction it was, like, is now. It wasn't that then. So during 1990, they were experiencing a huge crime wave. And 1990 to 1993 was actually seen as some of the worst years in the last 5 decades for the city, especially with crime. So everything in the city was just kind of not going well, and then there was a lot of crime on top of it. And they also saw really large increases in homicide rates. So on March 8th, 1990, 49-year-old Mario Rizko was walking home in Brooklyn from his job as a dishwasher at a restaurant in Manhattan at around 1:30 a.m. So he did actually have a disability and walked with a cane, and he was shot in the back. But Mario was able to actually make his way home and call the police. And he did survive, but he was unable to describe his attacker because he was attacked from behind. The attacker was wearing a mask, and it was just one shot, so it was kind of quick, everything that happened. So he had no description. He had no idea who would have done it, who could have done it. So 3 weeks later, on March 29th, there was a similar incident a few blocks away. 34-year-old factory worker Hermann Montenestro was walking home from a night of drinking when someone shot him in the back. And he was just about to enter the gate to his father's home. And Hermann's father actually heard him and took him to the hospital, and he had to have surgery. So he also did survive, but he could not describe the attacker. You know, he was kind of drunk, didn't really know what all was going on. Again, just like a single shot, and the guy's gone.
Yeah, if you're like walking home in the dark and like someone shoots you in the back and runs off, it's like you're never going to have any idea. Like,
yeah. So, police were able to recover the 9mm bullet, and there were no grooves on the bullet. So, investigators believed it was likely a zip gun. So, as you guys probably know, if you are in the true crime community, guns are manufactured to have identifying marks in their barrels. So, when the bullet's discharged, you can generally link the bullet back to the gun, you know? So it kind of, like, I think we've heard many cases like, oh, we matched the bullets exactly. But on this bullet, there's just no grooves at all. And zip guns are homemade guns, and they're usually made out of pipes or some other kind of device. And then they have a device where they can let the ammunition go off. So there's no grooves in this barrel. It's just like a pipe. So 2 months later, on May 31st in Queens, 78-year-old Joseph Prosy was about to open his apartment door when he was shot in the back with a 9mm zip gun. Unfortunately, Joe did die later at the hospital from his injuries, and this time the killer left a note beside the victim, and it was a threat to kill 12 people, one for each astrological sign of the zodiac. It said, "This is the zodiac. The 12 signs will die when the belts in heaven are seen." So Joseph was just a quiet older man and was known around the neighborhood, and they were like, this man didn't really have any problems with anyone. We don't know who would want to do this. And again, there's just no leads on who could have done it. And this is kind of when they start matching all 3 victims together. So before it kind of felt like maybe one-offs, you know, you're in a city now that has like incredibly high crime rates. You're probably seeing who knows what every day.
yeah.
But now they're like, this is kind of connecting all
Seeing
these.
a pattern here.
And they also noticed all 3 victims had some sort of ailment that prevented them from fighting back. So Mario did walk with a cane because he had that disability. Hermann was drunk. And Joseph was also an older man who worked with a cane. So they're like, he's targeting people who are kind of more vulnerable. And a week later, on June 6th, a similar note arrived at the offices of the New York Post newspaper. So there was a drawing with the signs of the Zodiac on it and a chart. So it was very neat and organized. And the writer in this note also called himself the Zodiac and claimed responsibility for the 3 shootings. But he did mistakenly believe that he'd killed all of them. So he thought all 3 men had died, but only Joseph had. So he did have the exact dates and times of the shootings. So that all lined up, and it had all the same markings as the earlier letters. And this note was wanting to, more to take credit, to kind of be like, hey, I did all this, I'm making my statement here. And it was apparent that he knew the victims' birthdays and their astrological sign. So Mario was a Scorpio, Hermann was a Gemini, and Joe was a Taurus. And he had marked these signs on the chart and stating that they were killed. Which is pretty creepy.
Yeah, very much so.
like how you know these people's signs.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the New York Police Department is freaking out now. And they're like, well, crap, now we have a huge thing on our hands here. And they do begin a massive manhunt and created a task force. And NYPD also begged the New York Post to not report the letter. And they're like, we'll give you an exclusive when we know something, but please, we don't want everyone freaking out. We don't want this to be a huge thing. Please don't release it. And they did hold off for a little bit. And the NYPD was also scared, they were going to be flooded with copycats of, everyone coming forward. It was me, I did it, or starting to kill people, all that.
Like we've seen, anytime there's any kind of high-profile case like this, everyone comes forward saying that they did it or their neighbor did it, which they have no proof of. They're just, I don't like this person, so I'm going to say that,
my ex-boyfriend did it, my ex-girlfriend did it.
Yeah. So you got to be careful with stuff like that for sure.
Yeah, but the New York Post did officially release a story on June 19th, so they only gave them 2 weeks, and they're we're releasing this.
Which I get, because I feel like the public has a right to know, too, that this is happening.
Yeah. They have a right to know, and, also, it's if we print this, everyone's going to be buying our paper.
True.
So, now the police realize that the Zodiac had actually contacted them before, as well as, 3 months before, but they'd been ignored. And so they were, kind of thinking they were just receiving another crazy letter. I'm sure police departments receive the craziest shit all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So they were probably just whatever, okay. Especially because this note said, the Zodiac will kill the 12 signs in the belt when the Zodiac light is seen. Orion is the one that could stop the Zodiac and the 7 sisters. So that kind of does just sound rambly.
Yeah.
And an expert in astrology helped police understand the constellations. So they said that Orion and the 7 sisters of the Pleiades were not visible on the nights of the shootings. So they were whenever this is seen, he's not attacking, but when it's gone, he's attacking. So they are believing that the Zodiac is implying he will not kill when Orion and the 7 sisters are in the sky. So of course the press is going to go wild with this, especially now that he's calling himself the Zodiac. So if you're feeling a little bit of deja vu, we did cover another Zodiac killer. He was in San Francisco. If you haven't listened, head back and go ahead and listen to those. We completely cover him, or her, I guess. Never been found, so can't be sexist here. And that case is still unsolved. He also sent police letters and newspapers, he was just trying to taunt everyone. And so now they're kind of seeing this again. And now law enforcement and the public are terrified that Zodiac had resurfaced in New York City, and it was going to be a nightmare because they're we don't really know who it is. Did he just take a 20-year break, fly across the country, and now he's at it again?
Which, makes perfect sense. I don't, since that person was never caught, I would probably definitely think that it would be the same person as well.
Yeah. So handwriting experts compared the New York City Zodiac's handwriting to the San Francisco's Zodiac killer. And experts noted that for the New York City Zodiac writer, he kind of made his horizontal lines in a descending way. So like when he crossed his T's or lowercase f's, like they all kind of tended to descend. And then within further examination, they determined that the handwriting showed it was likely two different men. Like they didn't think it was the same person. So New York City now had a very smart and sophisticated copycat. And the shootings were also happening in 21 days intervals, indicating possibly a variation like on the 3-week cycle. So to figure out when the Zodiac would strike next, they recruited astronomer Gregory Matloff to figure out the next time within the 21-day cycle when Orion and 7 sisters would not be in the sky. And he was able to do so like with his astrological charts. So he explained you can tell by day, time, and location what will be rising, what will be setting. If you've ever done like your zodiac sign birth chart and you have to put in like your city and your time you were born to get all your different signs, kind of similar. So Gregory did predict that he would attack next on June 21st, which is also the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. So this is kind of the story that's told in the Forensic Files episode. But if you watch Mark of a Killer, they don't mention this. They don't really mention the astronomy aspect at all. And they don't mention Gregory. And they're like, we were just looking at a chart and noticed. And then we said, it'll be this day.
Interesting.
Same people interviewed too. So I don't really
It's always very weird when that happens. But I also wonder too, if sometimes they're just like, we have too much information, so we have to like decide where to cut it down. So that was something that they're like, it's going to take a while to get into all of this, so we'll just say we noticed the 21 days or whatever.
Yeah, that's true too, because Forensic Files is more about like these crazy aspects that help solve a case, which astronomy is one of them. And then, yeah, so I just kind of wanted to mention both of those. I don't know. Who knows why it was left out in one, but I don't want you to go watch Mark of a Killer and be like, you liar.
Courtney just made all this shit up.
So NYPD sent out hundreds of detectives in plain clothes in the Brooklyn and Queens areas. So the Zodiac did strike, but he was clever and not in the same spot as before. This time he attacked in Manhattan, and he did shoot an unhoused man, Larry Parham, who was sleeping on a bench in Central Park. So Larry did survive the attack as well and was rushed to the hospital, and they were able to get the bullet from the attack, and it did also match the bullet used to shoot Joseph. And he did leave a note here as well, and the Zodiac knew that Larry was a Cancer, and the note also expressed some angers that the newspapers were calling him a copycat, and he said one Zodiac. So he's very upset. They're comparing him to the San Francisco Zodiac killer, which you're calling yourself the same name. Like, what do you expect people to call you?
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure that was intentional on your part, but okay.
Yeah. So investigators are trying to look for some forensic evidence now. So they saturated the letter with ninhydrin, which is a chemical that reacts with the amino acids from skin oils. So afterwards, they put the letter in like the humidity chamber for several hours, and the moisture accelerated the process, and they were able to get a thumbprint from the letter, which I thought was also very cool, like forensic stuff you can do. So they photographed it and compared it to every fingerprint database available. So that included city employees, Department of Motor Vehicle employees, postal workers, and even the police departments. So even like the police officer fingerprints were compared, which should be the norm, but we don't see that often. Yeah. So it did stand out to me because I was like, at least you guys actually did what you were supposed to do and be like, is it any of our police officers?
I mean, especially if you're comparing it to like all these other people. Like I get the hesitancy if you're like comparing fingerprints from a crime to someone who had to get a background check for a job, and you're like, that's not why I gave you my fingerprints. But if you're doing this for all these other people, it should definitely include the police department as well. Like they should not be exempt from that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, comparing all these, there were no matches. So NYPD was able to interview Larry Parham, and he said he did not see who attacked him, but 2 to 3 days earlier, another individual had sat down with him and started talking to him, and during this conversation, his zodiac sign was brought up. Like, they were just kind of talking, and he was like, yeah, I'm a Cancer, whatever. And he was kind of vague in his description of the man, but he did sit down with a sketch artist. And so the sketch depicted like a heavier set black man with a mustache and some facial hair. So police did release the sketch to the public, and as you can expect, people just responded with basically any heavier set black man. Any heavier set black man they saw on the street, they called it in, but none of the leads really panned out. So, 21 days after Larry Parham's attack, police flooded Central Park and the Brooklyn and Queens areas, but the Zodiac did not strike that night. So, as we could tell from the letter that was left with Larry Parham being upset about being called a copycat, they could tell Zodiac was following the newspaper's reporting of the case. And the newspaper then reported that they had his fingerprints. So they think this really did scare him into being caught, and he did not attack again for 2 years. So police were still going out in 21 days intervals, but there was just no other attacks. And it did become a cold case. No leads were panning out. And so resources were being reassigned from the task force. And then 4 years later, on August 1st, 1994, the Zodiac sent a letter to the New York Post announcing his return.
So the Zodiac claimed responsibility for the death of 39-year-old Patricia Fonte in Highland Park. Patricia was a Leo. He had shot her and then stabbed her almost 100 times, which is very different from his previous attacks, so definitely seeing some escalation here. Then 40-year-old Joseph Diacone was shot and killed walking near a highway underpass. Joseph was a Virgo. The bullet severed his carotid artery and he bled to death. The Zodiac's next victim was 40-year-old James Weber, and he was shot in the same location. He was a Libra, but fortunately he survived the attack. James said that after he was shot, he could hear the shooter run away and laughing loudly. One of the victims was also able to help provide a sketch of the attacker because she saw him briefly. So her sketch was of a man who appeared to be Hispanic with a thick mustache and a fedora. So obviously this is very different from the earlier sketch of this heavier set black man.
Can I also talk about how terrifying it would be to be shot in the middle of the night and then you hear the person running away and laughing?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is terrifying.
Ugh. Yeah, that is so bad. So at this point, all 7 of the victims had a different zodiac sign, but this did stop with the killer's 8th victim. So 40-year-old Diane Ballard was also shot and survived. She was a Taurus, which was the same sign as Joe Proci. So the Zodiac also claimed responsibility for shooting another man in Highland Park, but police could not confirm the shooting. And one of his last remarks in each letter was the phrase, "no grooves on bullet." So if you remember, that was a ballistics identifier of the zip gun used. So clearly he is aware of some of the specific details of this case that were not released, So he did brag that police would never catch him, but he made a mistake with this letter. He licked the envelope flap and left enough saliva for DNA testing. So police now have the DNA profile of the killer. So this letter also included another clue, which was a code. So Kieran Crowley was a reporter with the New York Post, and he's like, I just know that this is a code. It was 9 towers because of the 9 victims, and there were 23 different symbols, and he also conducted a frequency count. So if you write down, how much each symbol or letter is used. So Kieran's father-in-law had been a code breaker in World War II, so he's like, I think I know what I'm talking about. Here's what I see looking at this weird image, So they worked together and discovered that the alphabet was based on a maritime system of international flags and pendants. So with this discovery, they were able to decipher the code, and it said, "This is the Zodiac speaking. I am in control. Who mastery, be ready for more. Yours truly." Which is obviously very similar to the San Francisco Zodiac's writings.
Yeah.
So at this point, they have some forensic evidence, so they put together another task force, and they did notice that he predominantly attacked in 2 areas, so they tried to pull names of people living there to, get some clues, but they just came up with nothing, and the case goes cold again, and the Zodiac fades from headlines once more. Then on June 18th, 1996, a young man in a Brooklyn apartment got angry because his younger sister and her boyfriend were together alone in her bedroom. So he demanded that the boyfriend leave, and when he refused, he fired a shot through the bedroom door. So we're just taking overprotective older brother a little too far here.
Real casual. Just,
Yeah.
You're not going to leave? I might kill you. We'll see.
Yeah. So when the sister ran out to confront her brother, he shot her in the butt with a shotgun. So the police arrived to see the man holding his sister's boyfriend hostage, and he also appeared to be shooting out the windows at police officers. So Captain Joseph Herbert was assigned as the hostage negotiator, and it was actually his first time acting as a negotiator, so that sounds terrifying.
I know, right? Like that first time, like you have to go do it, you're like,
here we go. This, I don't know how much these practice scenarios really prepared me for this. So he did try to talk to the man from the barrier, and he's saying, like, enough damage has been done. This doesn't have to go any further. Like, we can just end this here. So after 3 hours, the man did indicate that he wanted to surrender. So Herbert convinced him to put all of his weapons in buckets that police lowered to his window from the roof, and all of his weapons were zip guns.
Ooh.
Getting interesting. There's a reason we told you about this random guy. So he did eventually surrender, like we said. He was 28-year-old high school dropout Herberto, who went by Eddie Seda. So he was unemployed and living at home with his mother and younger sister, and it was reported that some days he would seem like shy and religious and kind, and then other times he was like aggressive and scary. So we're getting two different sides to this man. So back at headquarters, police asked Seda for a written statement about what happened in the apartment. He did comply, and when he signed the statement, he put an odd symbol next to his name. So the detective asked him what that was, and he responded saying it was a symbol for God and God's love. So a police officer asked Herbert to come take a look at it, and Herbert knew immediately what he was looking at. He said that he felt very calm that day because he's like, I know that we have him, like we finally caught this guy. He's like, I've studied these letters for years and I know what this symbol is. Like, this is this Zodiac killer. Mm-hmm. So police now needed to prove their suspicions. So they got Eddie's fingerprints and they were compared to the ones they had on the Zodiac letter, and it was a match. So now they had handwriting experts compare the handwriting from the Zodiac letters to Eddie's written statement, and the experts did conclude that it was from the same person. As we've said many times before, we know handwriting analysis is not an exact science, but this is in conjunction with this other evidence that they do have. Mm-hmm. So ballistics experts examined Seda's collection of 15 zip guns. So the Zodiac claimed in his letters that no one would catch him because there were no grooves on the bullets. However, he did not know about forensic toolmark analysis. So a toolmark is a characteristic left behind during the process of using a tool to grind, file, cut, or polish a piece of metal. So there can be like hundreds of microscopic tool marks left behind when making a handmade gun. So they did compare the bullets from the crime scenes to the bullets in Seda's gun, and they were similar. So to top off their forensic evidence, police asked Seda for a blood sample for DNA testing, and his DNA did match the saliva from the envelope flap on the Zodiac letter. So detectives told Seda that they knew his identity, and he just denied it. But eventually, after a 6 or 7 hour interrogation, he did say he was the Zodiac. So police are now looking into who this person is. They did discover that Seda's dad had left pretty early, so it was mostly just him and his mom and his sister. He was very socially awkward, didn't have a lot of friends. He spent a lot of time watching TV and reading books about guns, and he said one day that there was a show about the Zodiac killer in California, and so he saw how that person evaded police, so he decided to follow in his footsteps. So Seda was charged with shooting 6 people and killing 3 others, and prosecutors had so much forensic evidence that they were actually worried they were going to bore the jury, so they're like, we got to find a way to keep their interest. However, the jury members were not bored and sat on the edge of their seats to listen to these details. Seda also acted out in court, getting very angry during the testimony, saying he didn't want to be there. He even ran towards the judge at one point, like he is just doing the most in this trial.
Yeah.
He did end up having 2 separate trials, and both juries found Seda guilty. He got 80 years in one case and 152 and a half years in the other, which were consecutive. So in total, Seda was sentenced to 232 years in prison.
they like threw the book at him, which I completely get
Yeah.
because of like what you were doing and all that. Mm-hmm. But just them being like, oh my gosh, how are we going to keep the jury's interest when we're like, here's his matching handwriting, here's his matching fingerprints, here's his DNA. Like, how are we going to keep them interested? And then literally it's like, I guess we did, because now 232 years in prison. Like, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, but like with like the forensic evidence like that sitting in a jury, it is, I mean, I've never been in a jury, but I've watched, trials that were videotaped. I don't know why I can't think of that word. So basically, I've watched trials is what I'm saying, and like it's super technical. It's not just like, oh, here was the saliva, here's his DNA, it's a match. Like they have to go into like how
Every
DNA works
detail.
and exactly
Yeah.
like so like hours and hours, because like we understand in general what DNA is, but they have to make sure that every single person on the jury knows. Like you have to act like this person's never heard of DNA. They have no idea what this is. They have no idea how it works. So I can see definitely being like, is this going to get too technical? Are we going to like bore them to the point where like they stop listening? Like,
And that's the thing is you have like, you're like, I want to present everything, but like now I'm going to have to go into tool mark analysis. I'm going to have to go into how fingerprints work, how zip guns work, how DNA works, how, all this. And it's like, I feel like that happens a lot of times is like, sometimes your best expert on a topic is just who is the most personable. Like, not who's the smartest, it's who can just like get the jury's attention and keep their attention. Like, it doesn't matter if what they're saying is bullshit. If they can get the jury's like, they'll believe it. Like, that happens. Like,
yeah, absolutely. So now the big question is, how did Seda know the victims' birthdays? So Seda will not tell. So he has answered every other question except for this one. Investigators do have a few theories. So Mario Orozco had a very regular routine. So they believe that Seda could have followed him and like gone through his mail to get his birthday. Hermann Montenestro says that he did lose his passport the night that he got shot. And they believe it was possible that Seda could have talked to Joe Proci and gotten his sign before shooting him. They believe that Seda took Larry Parham's wallet before shooting him to make sure of his Zodiac sign. Others have theorized that it was just luck. So, like, it's pretty clear that he, was taking the time to make sure that he got this part of his plan right, because that's pretty coincidental if you didn't plan this, for there being 8 of them. It's not like there were, like, 3 and he just happened to get 3 different ones. For them to be that many and he got all of them different except for one, I think that's pretty much what happened.
and that's the thing too, like in his letters, he was like writing down who matched who. So it's like, obviously it wasn't just luck that they all matched. Like he knew their signs, and obviously he wasn't staying around for a long time after to be like, what's your sign? you know? So he definitely found a way to figure out their signs.
Mm-hmm. Like he picked these people beforehand. This was not a random shooting on the street. So Seda is currently serving his life sentence in Attica, which is a prison in New York. It is reported that only his mother has visited him, which, as we said before, he didn't really have any friends or anything. In 2004, he was working as a porter, who's the person who delivers meal trays and buckets of warm water to all the inmates. And it apparently angers him to be called a copycat killer, but like, that's exactly what you are. Like, you even said you started doing this after watching a show about the Zodiac. So like, I don't know why you're offended by that. He has also apparently began a romantic relationship with Cynthia China Blast, who is a trans woman serving time on charges of murder and manslaughter. And Cynthia really seems to fetishize serial killers, so she was immediately intrigued by Seda. She also has a goal of having sex with Son of Sam, so she's just got it going on.
She's doing the most out here.
Yeah. So at the time of the article in 2004, Cynthia was in a lawsuit with the Department of Corrections for gender-affirming surgery. Whether they are still together now is unknown. Like I said, that's been a minute, but not really any news on him since then.
And I don't really know what happened with the lawsuit either.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't find any updates on her, on their relationship, like on anything.
Yeah. So that is the story of the copycat killer, Herberto Eddie Seda, and the murders of Joe Proci, Patricia Fonte, and Joseph Diacone, as well as the attacks of Mario Orozco, Hermann Montenegro, Larry Parham, Jim Weber, and Diane Ballard. So that was wild. I'd never heard of this one. I don't know how
Me either.
this one is so like unknown. Like to be another serial killer, to be one who copied the Zodiac, like
Yeah, and like how scary it must have been like before he was caught, because you're like, is the Zodiac back? And they're like, the handwriting doesn't match, and you're still probably in the back of your mind though, like,
but is
but
it
could
him?
it be?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's just so crazy, and that it's just not talked about. Like, we all hear about the San Francisco Zodiac
Yeah.
killer, but we never hear about this guy. Like,
I wonder too, because I feel like a lot of the copycat killers don't get a ton of attention. I wonder if that's on purpose because they don't want more people doing stuff like this. So they're like, we don't want to tell everyone that someone saw all this media about the Zodiac and then went and did the same thing. Because then it's like, is the media to blame for this person? Because I mean, this person literally said, I saw this and so I decided to do this, which I'm sure if you have the capacity to murder, you're going to do it anyway, regardless of how you choose to do it. So I'm not saying that like the media is to blame, but I wonder if they, have some reservations about sharing that that's how this came to be. So some of these copycat cases just kind of get swept under the rug because they don't want people getting the same idea as well. I don't know.
yeah, it's just crazy. And he is a copycat, in case he somehow listens to this in prison. I just want to piss him off. Copycat, copycat, copycat.
Like that is what you are, sir. You decided to do that for that reason. So, yeah, that is that case. Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week, I was trying to think today if this has been my perk of the week before, and I can't remember. So I'm just going to say it, is that my perk of the week is I got a facial yesterday, and it was incredible. I'd had one like a few months ago, and so I can't remember if that was my perk of the week when that happened.
I'm pretty sure it was.
I think it was too, but this facial I'm going to say was better because she gave me a massage this time.
Wow.
It was heavenly. It was so good. But yeah, that's just like step one in my little I'm getting married in 6 days preparation to try and make myself look decent. I've been trying to whiten my teeth. I've been trying to get a facial. Like, we're trying to look our best here. So, but yeah, so I think it is you know what? For the copycat killer, I did a copycat perk of the week.
I like it. An unplanned theme.
And I will say, if you are on the fence about having a facial, like, just go do it. It is, like, so nice. Like, it's kind of expensive, but it makes your skin feel so good. And, we got to take care of our faces because that's sometimes all we got.
I think I've mentioned before that Andrew got me a spa gift certificate for Christmas that I have not used yet because what is time? I just have, So hopefully I'm going to do that.
Partially my fault too, because, I was like, hey, Jacqueline, by the way, I'm getting married. I need you to do, like, all these things. So
yeah, so all my weekends have been, all these things for Courtney's wedding. So, spring is just gone already. I don't know where this was. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, so I think I'm going to do a massage and a facial with my gift certificate. So,
ooh, yeah, you should. Facials, they can hurt a little bit, but
yeah,
amazing for your skin. So, yeah, so that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is funny, is also kind of an unintentional copycat killer. Copycat perk of the week. I'm not a killer, I don't think. So, but my perk of the week is Veronica Mars. I'm pretty sure this was my perk of the week when I first watched the TV show and the movie, but now I've read the 2 books this week. So they've been on my list for a while, and I was just going through and seeing what books on my list to read are available through my library's ebooks, and both of them were. So I checked them both out and read them back to back, and they were super good. They were just so, it felt like the show, you know what I mean? Sometimes, I mean, obviously it was written by the same people, so I'm sure that was intentional, but it's very hard to write a TV show and a book in the same way, and for them to really have the same, vibe of, the characters' personalities and, their relationships with other people, and I just thought it was so well done, and it was just, kept my attention so much, just could not put them down.
Yeah, I remember, because I made Kevin watch Veronica Mars with me, all the way through, And I was like, I need to read the books. And I literally walked into McKay's and looked for them. And they just so happened to be right next to each other.
Wow.
Each were like $3.
Yeah.
Right now. And I just picked them up and was like, I'm done. Let's go. Yep. Nothing can top this right now.
That's awesome. It was meant to be.
Yeah, because people who don't live in Knoxville or Nashville or wherever else McKay's are, it's basically just like a used bookstore. So you can just like take your used books and then they resell them to other people. So there's no catalog. Like you don't really, like you're just going to go in and hope for the best.
You just browse and see what jumps out at you.
Yeah. So the fact that I somehow found both these books next to each other first try is unheard of.
Yeah, for sure. Especially like, not that it's like a rare book, but it's not, a super popular book or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys want to tell us about your love of Veronica Mars or your facials or any other random thing that we've said in this episode that we will forget by the time this comes out, but we will still love to receive your feedback and hear what you think about all these things. Tell us if you've heard of this one, because again, we have not. But you can do so on Instagram at Caffeinated Crimes Pod, on Twitter at CAF Crimes Pod, that's CAFF Crimes Pod. We are on Facebook at Caffeinated Crimes Podcast. You can email us at caffeinatedcrimespod@gmail.com.
And also, as we always remind you, if you want some extra content, we do have 20 bonuses, I believe, up, 21 coming out soon this month. We have Discord, we have Google Hangouts, we have just a bunch of good different perks over there. You can get quarterly gifts, you can get a pin and sticker. We're trying to do the most that we can over there. On patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes, you can just donate a little bit of money and get some perks and help support the show and make it the best it can be. So please go do that. And in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.